The button has been pushed. Hello and welcome for this week's episode live from the Mishawaka Amphitheater. I could not be more stoked to be here with Dan Mladenik. Dan, what's up?
How's it going, Cody?
Wonderful, brother. So Dan invited me up here so that we can highlight one of the greatest venues in Colorado. I don't know if you guys have been here. It's in the Poudre Canyon, just north of Fort Collins. It is literally one of the greatest venues I have been to in the country. I'm so spoiled because I live 3 miles from Red Rocks and less than an hour and a half from the Mish. So what I wanted to do, Dan, is talk a little bit about the Mishawaka, talk about some of your history, talk about what you guys do here, and kind of like your role as a booking manager and an owner of this incredible venue. So the first thing I wanted to start about is the history, the history of the Mishawaka Amphitheater. So can you talk to me about, like, when did this place start? How long has it been around?
The Mishawaka was established in 1916, and that's just the dance hall and the restaurant over there. A gentleman by the name of Walter Thompson was riding his motorcycle up the Poudre Canyon and stumbled upon this glorious location and thought this might be a perfect place to have a little restaurant venue kind of thing inside over here. And so he started. This was established in 1916, restaurant and dance hall, and then it's kind of evolved over the years. The restaurant is kind of our full-time year-round, and then from May through October, we do the concerts right here on the big stage, and that started kind of in the mid-90s is when we started doing like these big concerts in the amphitheater out here.
For over 80 years, it was literally just inside.
Yeah,
right?
And we celebrated, I'm not sure how many years ago, but we had our 100 years of the Mish was a big thing. It was before my time. But yeah, that was so that would have been 2016. That we celebrated that. So yeah, a long time it's been.
It has been a long time. So obviously there's been a lot of evolution with the property. Going from an indoor venue that probably sat just a couple hundred.
Yeah.
How big was it inside? Because now it's mostly a restaurant, correct?
Yeah. And we still have that little stage dance hall in there. We use it for something else right now, but yeah, so it's probably about between the deck and the inside. I think it's about 175 people maybe you can handle in there.
So then somebody started with that beautiful stage back there, right? And then with this venue, when they built that in the 90s, how many people could you guys bring to the outdoor venue?
We are technically 950 capacity, and we have our 2 VIP decks, so just right around 1,000 people. At least that's how many tickets we sell. Then we have all our staff and the bands and their crew and all that kind of on top of it.
Awesome. So I know when I met you 20 years ago, when we were looking back here, you guys can see that there's turf now and there's concrete being poured. But back in the day when I first started seeing Yonder and the Grisman Quartet and some of these bands in the early 2000s, it was gravel, right?
Yep, the pea gravel, and you can see there's still some remnants of that. But over the last, 10 years or so, 12 years, my partner Danny, so we've been redoing a lot. We've laid the concrete all around here. I don't know if you guys can see it from up here. And then just in the last couple of years, we got this AstroTurf put in and finally got all that pea gravel out of here.
So you finally made my feet not hurt so bad.
Yeah. It's nice for the bare feet, the sandals. It's a lot different. You're not getting rocks in your socks.
So is that stage, because it's picturesque, right? So is that the original from the 90s and you guys have just been updating it? Or
yes.
How does that kind of look?
We've done some updating on it here and there throughout the years. Had to reinforce and add some stuff. So yeah, but that's mostly its original form up there, other than a few tweaks over the years.
Okay, and so I know way back in the day in my old man status, there's a private island over there. And when we were going to college, you could actually stay on the island, right?
Yep.
And now I know that a lot of that has changed. And so when people talk about the Mish, you're driving up the Poudre. How many minutes is it away from Fort Collins?
It'd probably take about 35 to 40 minutes. It'll take you to get to and from Fort Collins.
But I know that, so like with that evolution, so they stopped camping on the island. Back in the day, we used to park inside the white line. We were at a show last night, and obviously we're going again tonight. Some people are still doing that, but what have you guys done to alleviate some of that traffic, and what are you offering for people so that they can come and have a good time here and not necessarily have to make that drive?
So we do have about 60 parking spots that we sell up here for every concert. So for 1,000 people, not a lot of parking, and there's additional parking for staff and things like that. But when Danny took over in 2010, She promised the county that she would figure out a way to get people safely up and down. So that's when we started our shuttle system. So as many of you know that know the Mishawaka and come to some of our concerts, we run old school buses, shuttles as we call them. From now, it's the CSU tennis complex. It used to be kind of by the student center over there. But yeah, so we have a fleet of buses that we operate. We have a whole transportation company that we run. And yeah, so we have right now in our fleet, I believe there's 9 of our old school buses. And then we also sometimes rent NOCO party buses and use some kind of third party when all our drivers were kind of maxed out and there's a lot of people riding. So that's what we do to kind of alleviate some of that stress and some of that parking is we run people to and from the concerts from CSU. So.
And now, obviously, being a book and usually running late, do you stagger those buses for leaving Fort Collins? And then say maybe I'm getting too messed up or my wife gets drunk and leaves in the middle of the show. Are you able to then hop on a shuttle, or is it only pre and post? How does some of that work for getting in and out?
That's a good question. It's not an exact science. People, when they get up here, they're always kind of like, what time do the shuttles leave to get back to town? And so what we do is we have 3 shuttle times down in town. Our standard door times and show times are 6 and 8. Sometimes that fluctuates. Like today is a little bit earlier. It's a Sunday, so we're doing 5 and 7. But on a standard show time, 6 o'clock doors, 8 o'clock show, we have our shuttles down in town, and there's a 5:15 and a 6:15 and a 7:15. So there's 3 different times people can get on the shuttles. It takes about 45 minutes to get here. So those shuttles arrive 6, 7, and 8 right when the show is starting. So we get all those people, so you can pick your time. We get all those people up here. And then during the concert, it's not really an exact science when it's going to leave. Depending on how much capacity extra we have on the buses, we will stage a bus or 2 right down over here. And as people start to want to get on and start to fill it, some nights when space is tight, we will make sure that bus is 100% full before we send it. But a lot of times if we have some extra cushion, we try to get 20 to 30-ish people on there, and then we'll send that first one down so those people that want to get home a little earlier can get home. But if it's one of those shows that you just can't miss the encore or the end, then a lot of people you kind of have to stay until
there's the mad dash afterwards.
Yeah.
So if you miss the 7:15, do you guys have any options for like taxis or personal rides or Ubers, or is it you better be here by 7:15 if you're trying to get on a shuttle?
Well, we don't have any of those services that we use, but people do. If you don't have a parking and you don't have a shuttle, people will utilize Ubers and things like that. They're reliable on getting up here because you're getting picked up in town, but a lot of people are under the impression they'll be getting that Uber home, and that's not the case. These Uber drivers don't like to come 40 minutes from town, and then these people have already left, and so it's not a reliable way to get home.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the island. Way back in the day, you could camp. There's a lot of nonsense that happened that changed. What about some of the options for us folks that want to stay closer to the venue? Is there any local like hotels? Is there camping spots? Is there closer places around here that you can stay overnight? What are some of those options?
So yes, you have Pingaree Park up the way. That's about 30 minutes up the road, up the canyon that way. And a lot of people will camp and stay up there. It's not super close or convenient. And then you have Ansel Watrous, which is just a couple miles down canyon, which is a state-run campground. And then most recently, we just built and took over a campground about 3 miles down that way. It's called Riverside, Colorado. And now it's a great option for Mish concerts. You can stay down there. We have tiny homes, cabins, these big tents that we built down there. And there's a free shuttle that will run you to and from the Mish for concerts. So that's probably one of your best options now. And that just opened this summer. So
that's awesome. So for the shuttle, for the parking, for the Riverside, do you pay for all that when you're purchasing a ticket? Are they going to the Mishawaka website? How do they lock down some of those things or look at availability? Because obviously you don't control the campgrounds. That's kind of free for all, first come, first serve. But for Riverside, that's owned by you guys here at the Mish.
Yes, yeah, and you can get, it's a separate deal. You get your tiny home or your cabin or whatever you want to rent. Now the shuttle, we have a couple 15-passenger vans down there, and they will run people to and from the Mish for free. So that's a free service that we provide down at Riverside, Colorado. And
how long have you guys been doing that?
The Riverside thing, we took it over like last year and started kind of started like doing all the construction and and gutting it and bringing in these tiny homes and all that stuff. But it was supposed to open this summer. We kind of had a soft opening in May, but it really just fully started kicking in gear in August of this year.
So it is relatively new, and
Yes.
it's an option.
Yeah.
And so that is through the Mish website, and you can go through that, or does Riverside have its own
It
site?
has its own website. Yeah.
Okay. Is it linked through the Mishawaka site
Yes,
so that
you
people
can find,
can go and get
you
that?
can find Riverside and vice versa. You can find Mish through the Riverside, Colorado. But as far as the shuttles go, that is an additional cost that the patrons have to buy. Same with parking. So you buy your ticket and it has fees and everything associated with, and that's just for your concert. So then if you want to get a shuttle, it's an additional charge, and parking and things like that are all additional on top of the ticket price.
So now that we talked about like the venue, the details about it, let's talk about the beauty of it, which is the music that comes through here. Obviously, I was very lucky to meet you in the early 2000s, and so we were seeing like Jeff Austin, Yonder Mountain. We were seeing the Grissman Quartet. There were a lot of these bands that came through, and over the years, it's kind of ebbed and flowed and fluctuated with like the types of bands that are coming through here. You said it's what, a 900-person capacity?
Yeah, right around there, 950 technically, plus the VIP deck. So yeah.
And so obviously I came up here. We're going to see the Sam Grissman project tonight with Pete Rowan. And last night we were at an EDM show. So you guys are having all sorts of different genres of music. Who else have you guys seen come through just in the last year?
A lot of, the bigger names. We do a lot of, the bluegrass and the jam bands, a little more electronic these days than we did in years past. But, we've had a lot of big names come through here, String Cheese Incident. It's one of the big ones, one of my favorite bands.
Don't humble brag. Kyle Hollingsworth played this dude's wedding, okay? So let's not pretend, okay?
But yeah, we had Closey do her 8-night thing up here in the reduced cap during COVID when everybody was seated at tables. So we had that come through. But your Green Sky Bluegrass, your Trampled by Turtles, the Lumineers, like we've had quite a few big names come through here.
And so I know this year you just had the Dwellers recently, right?
3 nights the
you had Molly Tuttle up here, right? Who else are some of the bands in 24 that have run through?
We got the Disco Biscuits coming later this summer on September 7th and 8th. Let's see who else coming through this year,
or has already come through that maybe people didn't know or realize that it was an option for. Because for me, surprisingly, when I talk about the Mish, there's the people that know it and absolutely love this place, but there are so many people in our scene that really don't know about this outdoor amphitheater.
Yeah, it's kind of a little hidden gem up here. Like obviously, you live in Fort Collins, you're in the music scene, you're in the know, but you'd be surprised how many people kind of just nestled up here in the mountains. And so there are a lot of people that are not super familiar. So we're trying to change that though.
And so how many shows a year are you guys normally playing? And like, are you because like I know Red Rock starts on like 420 and they're playing sometimes almost till Thanksgiving. Up here you're in the valley, so it could be a little bit colder. What are your start and end dates?
So always like originally, by probably about 2019 pre-COVID, it was always like the goal was to do about 30 shows. We would go probably mid-May through mid-September. Well, then when COVID came along, it kind of changed all that. So in 2021, after COVID, after we kind of figured out the table stuff, we started shows as early as like the first weekend in April. So we did some concerts in April and then extended it to the first weekend of November. So we've done that, but now
very similar to Red Rocks.
Yeah, but now we've kind of scaled back a little bit, but the goal now is to try to do 50 shows in the summer, and our main part of our season is really like mid-May through mid-October.
And so, I mean, you guys can't see, I'll try to take some photos, but if you look up here on the backside of the mountain, it is literally scorched earth. So in 2012, you guys had the High Park fire, right?
Yep.
And so I remember you telling me like Danny was getting conflicting information about it being burnt down or not being burnt down. What did that look like for the Mish, and like what happened? What was going on during that fire?
Yeah, that was pre my time. I wasn't up here yet, but Danny had taken over the Mish in 2010 and just kind of started getting her, everything going well, kind of cleared out some of the old stuff that was going on here and just really started getting the Mish back on its feet and just getting in full swing. And then in 2012, we had the High Park fire, and that was, the emergency responders call up here and they're like, hey, we need to evacuate you guys. There's a fire getting close to the area. So everybody cleared out. And then it was multiple news sources and and reports that you were hearing that like, oh my gosh, the Mish burned down, or oh no, the Mish is still standing. So there was a lot of conflicting information going on. So Danny and the Mish crew, they didn't really know what was going on up here. There was no way to really confirm or deny. So they were super worried something was going to happen to it. But, you know, thanks to the Larimer County firefighters and all these volunteer groups, they really fought to protect this place. You know, there's photos of firefighters standing right out in front of the Mishawaka with their fire hoses, and the fire is directly right across the street. So it was a large part due to all the first responders that really helped save this place. But we thought we were going to lose it there. For
thank you to those guys, but he is not lying. It's not even 100 yards up this hill, and it is burnt down. So these guys were sitting there making sure that this place was saved. And so you got through the fire in 2012, and then because of all the scorched earth, then you guys had to deal with a flood the following year, right? So a lot of times that happens, but what was the issue with that?
Yeah, after a big fire in the area, all the kind of brush and everything in the valleys, it just gets all scorched and burnt away. So there's really nothing to help with some of that water flow. So the years after fires, there's a lot of flooding. Every time there's going to be a big rain, there's floods in the area. So even our like island can go underwater, you know, and there's bands that are, hey, we might want to camp out on here on the island. And it's like, oh, well, there's some flood advisories. I don't know if we don't want you to get swept away in the middle of the night. So yeah, there's a lot of, after the fires always come the floods. So it's a lot running a venue up here.
So you got Danny's just holding her breath for 2 years in a row, and you didn't get any solace because you called that what, like 100-year flood, right?
Yeah. You don't expect to see another one like that for another 100 years.
Well, then 8 years after the first fire, you guys didn't have a fire directly on top of you, but you guys had to close a little bit for the Cameron Peak fire, right?
Correct.
But so even though that wasn't close, why did you guys have to close?
Yeah, that was in 2020. It was the Cameron Peak fire, I believe, and that one was not super close where we were in direct danger, but a lot of the air quality and the smoke from all the burning trees in the area were creating a real issue with air quality up here. So bands, you know, you'd get up here and it kind of had a Mordor vibe where there was just a lot of smoke and like, you know, it wasn't great breathing. So bands weren't really stoked on being able to sing and perform. So we had definitely some cancellations during that year as well.
So it just sat in the Poudre Valley and it was just on top of you guys.
Yeah, for the most part. And some days were better than others depending on the wind and everything. But yeah, that was like one of my first years up here. And I can remember having to cancel a few shows because of the air quality.
So your first years up here, let's talk a little bit. Well, first off, who are you, right? And like, where'd you come from? I know you, you're my homie. But like, before you came working at the Mish, and we'll kind of get to that, where did you get your start? Was it the Starlight?
Yes, when I took over in 2010, it was already Hody's, but originally, yeah, it was the
But you worked the door, right?
Yeah.
Like, I remember if you did, like, I lived with this kid in college for a couple years. And so I remember you working security at music because you just loved music. It's what you wanted to do. It felt like you didn't have to work. So you were working the door at Starlight because I know you may have gotten me in a couple of times. But so how did it transition? And then you're talking about Hody's. What was that? What was that evolution like?
So I graduated college in 2009. And then always loved Hody's, always loved going there. If those of you who aren't familiar, it's a 300 capacity indoor venue down in Fort Collins in Old Town on College Avenue. It doesn't exist anymore. RIP Hody's. But
I called it Cody's, but you know, it is what it is.
So in 2009, I started got out of college and just started, you know, I always loved music was kind of my life, and I always loved Hody's and the Mishawaka. So I started as a door guy, as you mentioned there, for not very long. It was a few months. And then it was like early 2010 that some of the ownership was kind of separating, and they were looking for somebody to come in, and me and another friend of mine, John, kind of came in as the other owners with one of the past owners that was still there. So then it was the three of us. So we came in 2010. Yeah. And we kind of had that partnership for a few years, and then that kind of fell apart. And then it was just me for the majority of the chunk. And then of course in 2020, when COVID came, that was kind of the end of the Hody's era.
But so let's back this up a little bit. So you go from working in the door for a couple months to a year later getting in a partnership, and you purchased the venue, right?
Yeah.
Or rented the venue before you purchased it?
Yeah, there was a lease that we had that they had signed previous to me coming in there, the past owners. So we came in, they were in some financial trouble. So me and my friend John came in and for a small amount of money, bought in as owners, and then we ran that place. And I ran that place for 10 years.
But so what was your, other than like being a music fan and working security, what experience did you have before you start running a 300-person venue?
Not a lot, honestly. It was a lot of trial by fire and learn by your mistakes. So I kind of had to just learn a lot on my own and digging through stuff. And I was friends with the guy that owned the Aggie Theater School, so he kind of taught me a lot. We became friends, and so he kind of showed me the ropes a little bit. So a lot of just learning and digging through stuff and talking to other people to try to figure out how payroll and property taxes and all this just different stuff about running a business worked that I really didn't have any idea.
Well, payroll and property tax is one thing. Although being a venue, it's also a bar, right? And so then you have like operations, you
liquor licensing.
Liquor, and so you literally just did that all trial by fire.
Yeah, and our, the owner that was there, he had been there only a couple of years. He wasn't super like privy to how the music industry and how all that stuff works. So there wasn't really too many people to show me how. So I just really had to.
There wasn't a lot of mentor. It was just kind of get it in, fuck it up, figure it out, move on. But so like, okay, so you get the establishment going, you have the liquor license, you have all the stuff. Now you have to get bands in the door.
Yeah.
Right. So were you booking those bands? How did that work? Like, how do you even go about that? And obviously for like a smaller venue, you're targeting different size bands. We already talked about some of the people that you've brought here at the Mish. What did that look like? Who were you targeting? Who were some of the people that you had brought in?
When I came in on the Hodies, and for the majority of the time that I was there, we had an in-house kind of talent buyer there. So he did a lot of the booking. Towards the end, closer to 2020, in the last few years there, I started kind of taking over doing some of the booking. He was still there, but I was kind of helping out, booking some local stuff, booking some of the smaller stuff. And so that's kind of really where I got my feet wet with learning how to book, was in a smaller capacity. But so learning how to, build an offer and talk to an agent and doing all that kind of stuff. So it was,
writing contracts.
Yeah, they kind of write the contracts, the agencies and the bands, those kind of come from there. But learning to read through them and understand what everything is in there, what are your obligations, their obligations, and
those slippery slopes.
Oh yeah, understanding the ins and outs.
And I mean, I remember as a buddy, I would call you because you ran a smaller venue. I'd be like, bro, who are some of these up and coming bands that I need to follow or check out? And you were always the man with, you need to do this and this and this. And so like, what were some of these bands that you had come through Hodies that have now kind of like blown up on the scene?
Well, we used to do, one of my favorites back in the day was used to do a couple nights, Trampled by Turtles. They would sell us out a couple nights. That was always a great
good old Minnesota
bar, and that was a great bar night. Those guys drank a lot of cheap beer and whiskey. I'll tell you what, that was a good crowd. And we did your Green Sky Bluegrasses, a little guy, Billy Strings, that some of you might have heard of. He played there in 2017 to maybe 100 people.
Couple humble brags.
Yeah. So we had a lot.
Bro,
of
you gotta give me that picture so that I can show them of Slick Billy in his skinny tie for your promo of that event. And that was 2017. So that was even before I had even known when I caught him at Telluride. So like, you caught a lot of these dudes early on, and then you kind of just watch them blow up. And I'm sure it's a double-edged sword for you because you like have these bands come in, they're rocking, and now they grow, but then now they're going to want to sell more.
Right. You go to the bigger venues. I mean, it's the name of the game, right? Like, there's not a whole lot you can do with these bands. You start them off, you build them up a little bit, and eventually they're going to outgrow you. That's just part of it. You might see them on the way back down, coming back through.
The ebbs and flows of the music scene.
But the guys like your Billy Strings and your Tramples doing the Red Rocks and the Fiddlers and all the bigger places, like, obviously those guys are well on their way and huge now. But it's just kind of part of the business. You're gonna have them.
Fun to have those notches in your belt.
It's cool stuff.
Checking this out. So then you said like 2020 it really changed, and it changed for everyone, right? Like COVID completely changed. And for like a bar and venue like Hodies Half Note, how did that impact you? Were you guys shut down right away? Because you're not essential, right?
Right.
So like, what did that look like? Was there any help for you guys? Because I remember hearing about certain programs or funds that we were trying to make available to try to keep you guys above water. But what did your story look like, and how did that really go for you?
Right in 2020 when COVID hit, obviously in like March of 2020, and nobody knew like what was going on, right? They just all of a sudden we're like, hey, we're shutting down the world basically, and it's all these, nobody can go out in public, you can't be around people, there's this coronavirus thing spreading. So, and all of us are like, oh, this is crazy, right? But it's like, maybe it's the last a couple weeks, maybe, who knows, a couple days.
14 days is what they told us, right? 14 days, we'll get through it.
We were holding our breath. That was going to be the case. Obviously, we had a lot of concerts we had to cancel, trying to figure out what was going on. And then it kind of became clearer over the weeks, months that like, oh, this is going to be a long time. Like, this is going to be a thing here.
So then how big of a staff did you have at Hody's? And then do you have to like lay them off or like,
yeah, luckily the unemployment thing was going on. So a lot of people that were out of work because of the industry they worked in, the restaurant industry and the music industry, those were jobs where people are all gathering around in an indoor environment. So a lot of those people all went on unemployment, much of my staff as well. I mean, I didn't have a huge crew there. We were only a 300 capacity venue. So I probably had between security, bartenders, like production staff, maybe 15-ish or so people.
That's still 15 families that are directly impacted,
exactly.
Right? And then it's also into your bottom line too. So then how did you guys deal with that? Like once COVID happened, you're seeing like, hey, this is months. Was there any funding? Because what was it? It was like the Save Our Stages. Our Stages. So what was that? Is that something that you were able to tap into?
I mean,
what was some of like the criteria for some of that?
There was a lot, like, and a lot of it, and they had these PPP loans, but a lot of that, the requirements were that you still had staff that you were paying and keeping employed. So a lot of that you had to
even though you weren't able to be open and operational.
So you had to be able to meet some of these certain criteria to get some of that money. But to Save Our Stages, I believe, even up here at the Mishawaka, we were part of all that. And this was very complex paperwork. Like you're not your average music venue owner, especially somebody like me that was kind of just thrown in
just a couple years under his belt.
Attorneys, and this was hours and hours of figuring out how to do this paperwork. And I'm pretty sure it took we didn't get any Save Our Stages or anything up here for I want to say like close to a year and a half. So that was like a lot of venues were sitting shuttered with no help.
Man, so then they could just be closing their doors because it waits so long to get there. So then in 2020, that starts happening. What did you start doing with Hody's Half Note, and how did you come to be where you are now?
So I've always been friends with Danny. She always used to do a lot of her spokes buzz band swap events down at Hody's. She's always talked to me about, hey, the Mishawaka, and I always loved the Mishawaka. So she was, maybe come work for me. And so pretty quickly after Hody's was shut down, I was trying to figure out what my game plan was going to be moving forward. There's a lot of new venues in town. We had Washington's open up. So there was a lot of new stuff coming in. All the breweries are doing music. So things were getting a little tighter and tighter over the years, just with
more competitive.
Yes, exactly. So it was.
And so those were similar size venues or a little bit larger?
The Aggie was about twice our size. Washington's about 3 times. But, there was a couple small clubs. I was really only the one in like the 300 range. But yeah, there was just everybody, right, wants to do live music. It's a great thing. You're a brewery or a restaurant, you got a little stage, a little PA you can put in there. Like people love that, So it was one of those things that everybody wanted to do. So things were getting kind of tighter for me anyways. When COVID came and it closed down Hody's, I started kind of reevaluating. All my staff was on unemployment. Was this something I was wanting to go back into? Now there's going to be all these restrictions and all these different things that you got to follow. And could another COVID thing happen again, So I was really weighing my choices on, did I want to reopen after 10 years or did I want to try to do something else? And I kind of, after talking to Danny and the things up here were kind of falling into place, it was one of those things I just decided, I think in life right now, I'm kind of done with the indoor club thing and I want to move on to something bigger and better. And that's kind of when I decided to make the move up here and not reopen it. And at the same time, I was talking to the Comedy Fort guys, which is what's down in that location now on College. So check out a show there. It's a really great little comedy club. So yeah, I was talking to him about it, and then they decided we'd still like to do this even with COVID. If you give us some time here to kind of come in and remodel and do some of the stuff that we could do it ourselves and not have to spend a ton of money, we'll get you some rent and we'll get some money flowing while you're shut down. So that was super helpful, and that's really when I was like, all right, and I kind of slid out and then became kind of the landlord there and then started doing the stuff up here.
So you are now transitioning out of Hody's and you're coming to partner with Danny. What does it look like? What is your position here? What do you do?
Well, originally,
what don't you do? Actually, after I followed you around last night, what don't you do here? And what is your official title and role here at the Mish?
Well, it was an evolving role when Cody's closed in 2020, I first came up here in May of 2020. The idea was I was going to be kind of the GM and help with the restaurant and just kind of help. And Danny was going to try to take a step back and kind of running stuff. So that was kind of the main idea, and then things kind of quickly pivoted. We needed somebody up here to kind of help do some of the booking. So that in the early stages became kind of my main gig, right? Was booking the shows, and we were at 100. I think in the beginning of COVID, we were 125 people seated at about like 13 tables. We had to keep separating.
So like pods.
Yes, pods. Yeah.
So
and
it was
everybody
like
had to wear
6
their
feet
masks.
away, and you were from a 900 capacity. You shrunk down to 125.
Yeah, and I think by the end of it, we were up to like 175. Things started getting a little looser towards the end. So we had some tables up on our deck and a bunch of tables out here in the venue. And yeah, so we had about like, I want to say it was like 15 or so tables and about 175 people. So I started booking those shows in 2020, and early 2021, we were still doing that model. And then things started to loosen. So we kind of had a hybrid of the tables, and then we started selling GA. So we had a little sectioned off GA section because now people could mingle. So but we didn't want to like refund all those tables and redo the whole thing. So we kept the tables and then started selling these little GA sections. So we had this kind of hybrid table GA thing. And then by the end of 2021, we were full capacity. So I started booking those shows, ramping them up. And I wasn't an owner here until earlier this year. So I worked here for 4 or so years. And now I'm on my like 5th year up here, and became an owner this year. And now I kind of help oversee everything, whether it's marketing or sponsorships is kind of one of the big things I do. As you see, we got a lot of banner and a mural over here, and it's just finding these sponsors and getting those dollars in is kind of one of the big things. And then on site, with my experience with Hoadies, and just, kind of filling in where it's needed, right? Like, who needs help over here, checking on these people,
A Dan of all trades.
Yeah, checking bags, like whatever I can do to help everybody out.
So then transitioning from the pod shows, like obviously all these bands, just like you guys being shut down, these bands were playing shows unless they were doing streaming. So like, what was it like to go and find these bands, to book? Now you obviously the transition didn't happen right away where you went to a venue 3 times your size, right? But like, how did it look like when you were reaching out to bands in COVID? Were people a little more reserved to actually jump in? Were they worried about safety? What was that kind of like?
Yes, definitely a lot of bands were very hesitant about like getting people together, right? It was just like,
the last thing you want to be is named the super spreader, right?
Yes, exactly. So there was a lot of hesitancy, right? And then like a lot of these bands, like, but this is their livelihood. This is how they made a living. So it was like they had to try to figure something out. So there was these table deals, and there's a lot less like revenue and money to go around, so they had to figure out making things work on their end. And we had to figure out like how much do we charge for these tables and how many people do you put at them. So there was definitely a lot of hesitancy in bands, but eventually, those things started loosening up and people were getting a little more comfortable. And honestly, we were like the first, I think, venue in the country to be doing shows. It was the 4th of July weekend in 2020. We had 2 nights of 10th Mountain Division up here. Oh, wow. And I think those were like the first concerts since COVID was shut down, as far as I know, like in the whole country.
That's crazy.
We were the first ones doing it up here. Yeah.
That's crazy. So then that starts to go away. COVID gets behind us, and now you're helping book some of these bands, right? So like, there's obviously a lot of history. What does it go into, like, booking a band? Are you reaching out to agents? Do you reach out to companies that then get you to agents? What are the webs that look like to try to get, because it's not like, oh, hey, I want to get Green Sky up here. Let me just get on Green Sky's Instagram and shoot them a message. Right. Like, how does that look? What is the process?
So a lot, there are like, the agents will blast out sometimes. Like if there's a band going on tour, you might get an email that says, hey, these guys are going to be on tour in the area, and these are the dates they might be available. So you get some of that, but a lot of it for me up here, we're an independent venue, so we're not a Live Nation or an AEG, and a lot of those emails go to those guys. They're very in the know and what's happening.
Well, because a corporate venue now, they're going to have others under their umbrella and subsidiary, so it may be quote unquote easier for them.
The bikers in the canyon.
Rabble.
But talking shit now.
Yeah, and that hurts me. Like, fuck you too. Like, God damn it. But so like, that's what's important is, so like, okay, so you're an independent venue. You don't have these corporate conglomerates that are helping you. So that if you're not getting those emails, are you going out chasing? Are you trying to see like, oh, hey, we have X amount of shows booked for X amount of weekends? Because like, explain it to me. Do you sign for like 1 year, or are there like multiple year deals where people are then like, oh, hey, we're going to come and we're going to do the Mish for the next 2 years or whatever it is? How does some of that look?
I think on a bigger scale, some of the bigger promoters in the country and in the world, that's how it works. They may lock it in for maybe multiple years, multiple plays. Here, not so much. You know, it's that summer, it's that tour, it's that run, that one show, or those 2 shows, or those 3 shows, depending on the band. That's what we're getting. It doesn't go to the next year. Although once those bands play here, a lot of times the next year, you know, when you come up here, you know, and you got Will and everybody treating them like royalty, they tend to want to come back. So we take care of our bands really well, and that's something we're known for. And obviously in this beautiful setting, it's just one of those things that, you know, the bands love to come back, and obviously all the history here. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of me sending out emails, right? Like I see who's, you know, I've obviously got my favorites of the bands I want to go after, but then there's also
which is why you're a jam band venue, but not just a jam band venue.
But just figuring out, you know, so I got to figure out, okay, who's the agent for this band? Let me shoot them an email, figure out, are they interested? Do they you know, have they heard of the Mish? Do they want it? Is it something they want to do? And then, you know, oh, hey, yeah, maybe we'd like to take a look at that. And then it gets to the offer, where I'll build an offer, you know, and send it to them. And then, you know, we go back and forth on the price.
But then you have to go back, because you're competing against other venues in those areas, right? And so, like, some of these places, like over the weekend, we just went to New Belgium, right? And you were talking about a soft ticket event. And so can you explain to me like what that is and what you're combating versus like how the process and pricing would work for you guys here?
Yeah, so the soft ticket thing, like, you know, the New Belgium thing, that was the Tour de Fat. That's just a free event, right? So that's an easy play for an artist. Like, they don't have to worry about, oh, is it going to sell tickets? How many tickets is going to sell? You know, the New Belgium's not worried about, oh my God, I'm going to lose money on ticket sale. You know, like, is this band going to cover how much I'm paying them? Like, those are things we worry about up here on like a hard ticket, as you call it. But down there on a soft ticket, those are nice little gigs for the artist, because it's good money. You don't have to stress sales and marketing it and doing all those things.
So they're getting a flat rate. Doesn't matter if it's one person or 1,000 people that shows up. They're getting the same payday. So then for you guys here at a venue or an independent venue like this, and obviously it changes from venue to venue, are they getting like ticket sales, percentage of concessions, merch? How does some of that break down, or what does that look like? And that's part of the negotiation process, right?
Yeah. It's mainly just with ticket sales. Doesn't usually involve food and beverage or any of that stuff. It's just based on
that's how you guys as a venue are making money.
That's how we make our money.
So you're paying them through ticket sales. You're not getting much from that, but then you're getting money off of like the food and liquor purchases. But then what about like merch? So like, is that all up to the bands? Because I know a lot. I mean, I'm a poster junkie, right? So then I'm like, oh, what the fuck? This band doesn't have a poster here. Is it you that I'm supposed to blame, or is it the band that I'm talking to, or is it a little bit of both? And not trying to put you in a hard spot, but like, who is that up to? And a lot of the times, like, I see your guys' staff sometimes are selling the merch, and it's not actually the band staff, but other times I see like the cronies or the groupies from the band that are then selling the merch. So is that part of the contract, or does it just vary from who's signing who?
Yeah, it depends on the band, right? And I guess like the level that they're at in their career. But a lot of bands, they'll roll with their own merch sellers and sell their, you know, bring in their merch. Some bands don't have merch. It's rare at this level you don't have merch, because it's good money for them, right? Like it's a nice on top of what you're making to play the show. You know, merch is a big business, and as you said, people are nuts for the posters. So as far as
you're wearing a merch shirt right now for the Dwellers, right? So like that's another way that they're getting paid out.
Yeah.
Right.
And there is a big thing in the industry is the merch cut thing, right? Like venues get a percentage of the merch sales. That's a big hot topic right now.
Because I feel like most like casual fans, we don't even know what goes into it, right? Like, we don't know how bands are getting paid or what's going on. And like, we're like, oh, okay, well, I'm paying $16 for a beer. Well, that's the only money that you as a venue are making, right? Not that I don't even think we're paying $16 for a beer here. Not at all. I'm just using an example. But so like, that's one of the things that benefits the bands and benefits the venue. So then us as patrons, we have to understand, like, when we buy a ticket, we're supporting the band. When we're buying concessions, it can be split between both. When we're buying food or beverage, that's how you're paying your staff and your venue and your bills, right? So the people that are trying to like sneak in or not do stuff, then they're not really supporting the people that are actually bringing us the music here, right? So then But what about like, because what I've seen is like people are like, oh, how come, like you said, Billy Strings, right? So he played at Fiddler's at 17,000, and people are like, oh, well, when is his festival going to be released, right? But what always happens is those next shows aren't talked about until the last show happens. So there's something called the radius clause, right? Can you explain like what that is and how that normally works for bands?
Yes, a lot of times for venues and promoters, you have a radius clause, right? So what it is usually an amount of mileage, distance from that venue, and days on either side of the event. So it's sometimes 30 days or 60 days on either side of that concert. You can't do anything within 60 miles, 90 miles, 150 miles. The bigger the venue, the bigger the radius.
Okay.
But as a smaller independent venue, like we have our radius stuff. It's pretty minor compared to most. But like obviously, and like things like Boulder and Denver are kind of in our radius. But when a band's big enough, it's like we don't really stress on it too much. If they can,
you're not worried about the direct competition about being 45 minutes or an hour and a half.
If they can be successful in Denver, Boulder, here, then we're cool.
You just see those as stepping stones. Getting their way up north.
And some of the bigger promoters, they're very strict on their radius clauses. So a lot of bands, you're very restricted in what.
And that's why you may only see them playing in like one spot in town or whatever it may be. Not that they don't want to, but depending on the contracts they sell, they're limited on when, how close, and how often they're playing some of those things.
Yep, and you don't want to oversaturate, right? You don't want to play 20 times and within 150 miles in Colorado, and then you've got 25 people at each of your shows. You got to be strategic about how much you're playing and where you're playing.
So there's definitely some of those reasons that go into it. But now, like bands, we always hear like how much like they can potentially be divas and things like this. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but like, what about like, are there like guest or contracts and riders and like agreements on like, are you providing them unlimited food and drinks on the guest list? So as a band, can they now bring in 50 extra people, or are those all line items that are negotiated and contracted in when they're signing with the venue?
Yeah. A lot of times that's worked out with like in the offer and contract stages. So it's a lot of them have guest list on top, but obviously you can't be too crazy because as a venue you have your capacity, your legal capacity that you can't go over. So you have to allot some for the band. They have their rider usually comes along with the contract, and that's their kind of list of stuff they want backstage. And we need
like Jack Johnson wants to make sure that everything's being recycled and like green friendly and
your yerba mates and all your different things, your organic fruits, and so it's always different depending on the band. And we have a restaurant right here, so we'll feed them. If they're here early, some of these bands get here at 9 a.m. And load into the venue. So sometimes we're giving them breakfast, lunch, dinner. Luckily, we have this restaurant.
Do they make like special requests, or are you then just saying like, hey, we have a restaurant, here's what we can give you? Do you give them like a budget where they then like order off the menu, or is it more like a catering gig where you're like setting up something? Because like you guys have a cabin for them to hang out in.
Yeah, we have a green room. Yeah. So like a lot of places like your Red Rocks, they have like these outside catering companies, and there's big here. We have our restaurant. We do like catering style meals for bands. We also will just do the regular menu and have bands order from that, depending on the size of the crew, right? Catering makes more sense sometimes, but there is like within the contract and the offer, there's a budget, right? So it's like you have X amount of dollars for the whole time you're there, and that's your shopping the rider like down in town, getting all the outside, any of the extra weird stuff we don't sell up here that they need, so doing some of that. So that plus all your meals and everything, there's like a budget, right? And that you have to kind of stay within that budget.
So like you talked about doing some of the sponsorships and some of these things from the beverages and liquor and food like that. So like, are they limited to only request things that you guys have here? Like, I know that you guys partner with Odell's, right? Yep. So like I'm actually drinking a Mishawaka ale. Didn't even know it was a thing, right? But you guys literally have your own beer. So then on a rider, are they only able to ask for those specific things, or can you get them like specialty drinks and then it's only available? And how does that work?
Yeah,
because you have a liquor license, right? So obviously there's stipulations to how some of that goes.
So a lot of it is things we carry, is what we're kind of restricted to as far as that goes. Now we can go into town, shop some of the rider, like there's a lot of stuff, we have a good chunk of stuff up here, but there's stuff we don't have. And there's some of these international touring artists, there's things that they're just comfortable with, right, that they like to have backstage. They're on the road in unfamiliar areas, so like we have people that will go down in town and shop some of this, whether it's food or some alcohol or whatever that we don't have. Like we'll do some of that shopping down in town. So they're not just restricted to what we have. We try to get them to stick with what we have here, but obviously we go out of the way to make them happy.
Are there any weird like food or beverage requests that can come to the top of your mind? You don't have to put the band on blast, but just be like, oh, I remember we had to go find this like specific type of tequila or whatever it was.
Like that. Some of these really hard to find items, you know, and sometimes it can get pretty like detailed as to what they want. And
like, isn't there the Rolling Stones asked for like only blue M&Ms? I don't know if it's a joke or if that's like real or not, but like, can people be like that detailed? Be like, I want all the pink Starburst unwrapped in a gold porcelain bowl.
I don't think at this level we get too much of that. You know, you're talking about big arenas and things like that, probably. But yeah, like they're generally pretty chill up here, and they're always willing to make concessions. You know, most of them are pretty easy to work with, but there are some things that they just have to have, and some of them are not easy to find, especially if it's something from another country. So you really gotta search.
Just hit the ground, send one of those production assistants or somebody intern to go get it done. So because a lot of us, we don't know about this stuff, about contracts, about bookings and venues and all this stuff. I would ask you as somebody, because now you're 15 years into the game?
Yeah, I'd say, I got my start about 2010. So yeah, about 14, 15 years going on.
So what is something that you feel like the common man or like us regular wooks need to know about or better understand about these processes or maybe understand? Because like people gripe and complain, right? And a lot of times those complaints come from misinformation or miseducation. So is there anything that you would want to like teach the crowd or let them know, like, hey man, we're trying to get your favorite bands, but like you don't understand how this works or whatever it is?
Right. You got to understand, like, you know, people that, you know, your Billy Strings can't play in 1,000 cap venue, you know.
Why not, bro? We just
he did.
And you should have caught it. You should have caught him when he did it in 2018.
Well, you know, there's just something
that poster is fire, by the way.
That could never make sense, you know, at certain levels artists are at. But I think, you know, a lot of it is like we're talking about merch earlier, right? It's like, you know, you see a $45 or a $60 shirt or poster, and people are like, oh my God, like merch is so expensive. Like, you have to understand, like, they had to pay to get that made. They got to pay to take it on the road. They got to pay somebody to sell it. They got to pay the venue a cut of the sales. So it's like, how much are they really making from that stuff, you know? And then as far as like alcohol,
so it's not like they're taking that $60 and putting it all in their pocket.
Exactly.
It's getting cut up 7 different ways, and now they're maybe getting half of that.
Right, if that, you know. And then a lot of it too with the venues, like people, oh my gosh, I'm at Red Rocks, $15 beer, and it's like, we got to understand, like, you love these venues, right? You want them to continue bringing your favorite bands. You want this industry to keep going. Like, you have to support, and it's like, it's not like they're making money hand over fist, you know. It's like they're making some to keep on going and to keep the scene alive. But it's like, honestly, I think a lot of people think that these venues are just rolling in it because of the prices they're paying, but they don't think about the staffing and the costs, and everything is going up
and all the overhead.
Exactly.
So you were saying at Hody's you had about like 15 staff, and that was a third of the capacity that you have here. How much are you guys holding in staff here? And what are some, because like, man, I see security, I saw medic, I saw production, I see interns, there's all the wait staff, there's the cooks, there's the bartenders. Like, even right there, you're up to like 15 without even having like all these subsets. Like, how big is your crew now?
Big. We have a lot of staff up here. So we have the restaurant, which has all our, you know, bartenders and servers and cooks. So we have the back of house, front of house, and then we have the venue with interns, production staff, venue staff. So I'd say probably on a given, you know, security, which is not an internal staff, they're kind of an outside company we work with. But so we have probably on an average somewhere in between, I'd say 40 or 50 people up here, depending on how sold and how busy the show is. That's probably
because I forgot shuttle. Like,
yeah, that's even a different. You add that on top, so you could have another 5 to 10 shuttle drivers. So yeah, you're talking 40 to 60 people probably to keep.
So there are a lot of line items in that profit and loss, and all of us that are complaining about $16 beers. But let's be real. How much did this beer cost?
Well, for you, free, Jody.
Well, I mean, not everybody's as lucky as me. But for any other schmo that comes up here, because like I came here and I was like, damn, I'm getting twice as much as I normally am for what I'm used to paying. And I told my wife it's like half off because I'm so used to some of these like living right by Red Rock.
But you know, if you get the Mish cup like you're using, You know, you're not only helping the environment, no plastic cups, but if you bring your cup back every time you come here, you get $1 off your fills, so you can save a little bit of money that way.
Look at my marketer go,
and help to save the environment.
So then for your staff and staffing, like we have all been dealing with some of the troubles with that. Has it been hard for you guys to keep staff? What does it look like with your turnover? I mean, for me, I would feel like everybody that loves music would want to work at a music venue, right? But also these are like very specific skills, being a sound guy or light, engineering, production, like what is the turnover? How often are you looking for people? And if there are people that want to like start to get into the scene, like you work from the ground up, right? Like you literally started as a door guy and worked your way up. So like, what would you tell people? Is there like a route that they should look at and go, or what does that look like? And how often are you guys hiring? Because like, yes, we're 30 minutes away, but like, I feel like I see the same people here all the time.
Yeah, so it is a drive from town, right? So that has its issues, gas, people getting up here. It's a little bit of a commute from Fort Collins. But yeah, I'd say like a lot of our restaurant, our servers, our bartenders, they're coming back every year, right? They've been our kind of core staff for a long time. We do have a lot of like, I'd say other spots, like, you know, our venue staff, our back of the house, we do struggle sometimes to keep it staffed. You know, it's a lot of work, and it's hot up here, and it's long days and a lot of hours. So we definitely struggle with turnover in some positions, but you know, our production crew, our bartenders, our servers, a lot of them have been here for many years and keep coming back every summer because they love the Mish, they love music, they love being up here, which, you know, you can see why they do, you know. So it's yeah, I'd say we do have our issues with it, but for the most part, I think we get a pretty solid core staff up here.
So then for somebody that's out there in internet land that's like, oh, I want to figure out how to get a job at a venue, what would you suggest the route that they go? Is it normally starting with something, I wouldn't say easy like security or serving, but is that kind of how you get your foot in the door? Or do you go like for the production guys? Are they going to school and then coming out of school? What does some of that stuff look like?
Yeah, there's a lot of the engineers, sound engineers will go to school and stuff. You know, it's starting, you know, not anywhere is just going to hire you with no experience to do some of the bigger things and the you know, jobs at the venue. So you do want to start somewhere lower and kind of learn all the ins and outs, right? They say the same thing about the hotel industry. You start as like, you know, doing housekeeping, and then you work your way, and you know, by the time you get to the top, you know how every aspect of the business works, right? So
well, and isn't that kind of what worked for you, is now working operations and doing the Dan of all trades? Like, you have spent time doing all these different roles, so you learn some of those details. Whereas if you just came right out of school and tried to get that, you wouldn't have had the experience, right?
Yeah, and you know, the one thing which we talked about earlier, like, you know, I didn't have a lot of experience. I kind of fell into the ownership thing. What we do up here is we work with interns a lot from down, you know, some college students. So we have
you get to pick from.
We get 4 or 5. We have an application process, and we have about 4 or 5 interns we hire every summer. And I feel like that's one of the best spots to get your feet in the door, because they come up here.
Are they paid internships?
Yes, they are paid internships.
Oh, so they're not just working for free.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's not a ton of money, but it's
but
money.
You're getting the experience to then be able to move forward as you continue to do that.
Yeah, and so that, you know, like, I wish I would have had an experience like that where I could see, oh my God, the ins and outs of how the hospitality with the bands. I mean, they're looking at our profit and losses. They're helping shop riders. Like, they learn so much about this industry.
They're seeing behind the curtain.
So when they go to the next step, it's like, oh, you know, I worked at the Mishawaka and I know how to do the X, Y, and Z. And, you know, so they get a lot of experience through that. And I wish I could have had something like that before I got.
So are they doing that through your website? Or are you like posting ads?
Yeah. It comes around, you know, once the season, before the season starts, we accept applications.
So if somebody's in your local town, go check out your local venue, see if there's internship options. Not every venue is going to be like you guys where they're paid options, but you're saying that's usually the best route to get in the door and try to figure some of these things out.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to get a job in this industry with no experience, right? You got to start somewhere.
But I'm cool, dude. Like, I'm so cool. Why don't people want to hire me? That's not good enough?
Yeah. No.
Damn it. All right. What about doing a bullshit podcast? Does that help?
I don't know about that.
Damn it. All right. So I might be closer or applying for an internship. But so, like, as you guys start to evolve and continue to grow this thing, how many shows will you have had here? You said around 50?
Yeah, it's always the goal. I think this year we're going to be at 47 or 48.
Okay. And so then how often are you, like, how far out are you booking? Like, so do you have 2025 like locked in, or because you're independent, it kind of cycles through?
A lot of holds in the calendar and offers at this point. But
and what does a hold mean? So like they kind of have a soft date,
they
but nothing's like signed and locked
They're
in.
probably holding it at multiple venues around the area.
So did they shop you guys like against each other?
Of course, yeah.
Oh,
man. See where you can get the best deal. Of course, it's part of
like,
the
oh, what are you gonna do for me, Dan? Like, what can I get? Like,
so
I want 50 people on the guest list and blue M&Ms.
The agent will hit you up and place holds here and other places. They know kind of when they're going to be coming through Colorado. A lot of the bigger artists, like these things happen a lot further out. But I'd say that really ramps up by the end of this year, early next year is when we're really starting. Like I have maybe 1 or 2 shows confirmed for next year already on the books, and a lot of holds and a lot of offers going. But yeah.
Hold on, will you answer a question in a second?
Kurt just said I need to make noise here. So
Perfect.
You're gonna have to test the PA.
You're all in trouble now.
Yes, we all are in trouble. Okay. I want to first off, let me get this motherfucker in here. Can you get closer, Will? We're all friends here.
Prince, take my keys.
Jangle, jangle. Scoot in, boy. All right. So, Will, first off, who the fuck are you? What do you do here?
What day is it?
So Will does everything. If you want to see a look of stress, come see Will at the second day of an electronic show about halfway through and just ask him how he's doing and see how that goes. But so what is your role here, Will? And like, what do you do at the Mish?
That's a great question.
And what don't you do after I saw you last night?
Yeah, I wear a couple different hats at Mish, but I'm the production manager and venue operations manager. So if it has to do with the show, I basically help oversee all the operations from advancing with bands to coordinating with our internal venue staff and production staff to make sure the show goes smooth and keep artists and patrons safe.
So when shit rolls downhill, it falls in this lap, and then Dan laughs at him like that and says, "Get shit done," right? And then there's other people that help that. So for your role, like you didn't just come into your role as a production manager. What was some of your history, and then how did you get here? I was asking Dan for people that like want to get into this industry and how he goes. He said a lot of the times it's engineering school, some of these things, starting off as an intern. What did your story look like, and how did you get to be where you are now?
Story's kind of long.
We got time, bro.
And not traditional, but I don't think anybody has a traditional story.
Isn't that the industry, though?
How they get in this industry. The abridged version, I would say, is I worked for the woman who owns the Mish, Nanny Grant. So I was working for her as an unpaid college intern for her music nonprofit back in the day.
Okay.
It was a music and arts incubator called Spokesbuzz. It helped basically develop local bands to the point of seeking management, so giving them the tools to kind of market themselves, provide opportunities to showcase. And I was helping her out for 2 years in college and kind of got my foot in the door and met a lot of people in the local music scene in Fort Collins.
That's awesome.
Which really
Are you from the Fort?
No, I grew up in upstate New York. Moved out to Fort Collins to go to CSU when I was a college freshman.
Oh, nice. So what made you go from upstate to CSU to upstate Colorado? You just like upstate?
I just like being upstate. I had the ability and the privilege to look at a state to go to school. And my dad was a CU Boulder graduate. And I took one look at Boulder and was like, I'm good.
Not my style.
I think CSU is a bit more me. So.
And that matched you. So then working from Danny's nonprofit, did you know that you wanted to get into the music industry, or did that happen when you were in school, or what did that kind of look like?
I always had a passion for live music. I used to be a drummer, pretty shitty drummer in a band. And so I really enjoyed.
I would have pegged you as a bassist.
Yeah. I really enjoyed being involved in the creative process, but I never found myself to be truly a creative. Even when I was in this band in high school, I found myself like taking on like the quote unquote manager role.
Okay. So it fit your personality.
Yeah. So
because let's not lie, you get shit done, right? Like you grab the bull by the horns and you get shit done. So from the nonprofit, then how did you start getting into production?
Just doing a little bit of work, stage managing at some local festivals.
And what does that look like? Because a lot of us as Wooks, we're just behind the stage watching it happen. Like, what is it that you do as a stage manager? What does a production team do? Like, we all think, okay, like a sound tech's like testing the music and plugging in wires. Like, as production, are you in charge of like speakers, setting up? So, like, what does that role look like for the people that don't know?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to like stage managing and production managing, I mean, my role here at Mish as production manager, as I'm overseeing the whole process, making sure that we're staying on time, making sure we're deploying the PA.
You're the one that I blame when we do the hard cut.
Yes.
You're like, fucking Will.
Yeah, I'm the guy.
You're like, Will's the one that's pulling the plug. But you're also keeping the gears rolling, right? But that's also when shit happens, you're the one getting called on the radio. We need to do this. And then you have your team that you can then send to do stuff. So how long did it take for you to work your way up to this position? Because, I mean, you're one of the leadership positions here at this venue now, right? So, like, how long did that journey take?
It took me, I would say, about 7 to 8 years, roughly, about 7 years.
But like we talked, you worked other festivals, right? You did a lot of different things. How long was it until you found like your home venue? Because now you're working here, right? And then in the wintertime when they slow down, do you go then pick up other jobs at winter festivals, or what does that look like to fill some of your time?
So I've been involved in different things during the off season.
Okay.
I used to be involved in the various projects that Mishawaka has been involved with the last couple of years, the last 2 years. I take some time to recharge, but it's a lot up here. And
all you had to do is look at his face last night and you'd understand.
Take some time to recharge, and also do some other work at different festivals. I'm looking to do more this year, which I'm excited about, but I've had the ability to work with Bonfire Entertainment.
Hit us up. We'll get you in charge with him. He's a badass.
Yeah. Work with Bonfire Entertainment, who helps produce Renewal and Winter Wondergrass festivals. So I've had the privilege to work with that team, and they're outstanding individuals. So that's been a really, really cool learning experience for me.
How do you feel about empty chairs?
I hate empty chairs.
Good. So do I. Fuck those chairs, Will. Fuck those chairs. What I want to ask,
like no chairs all the time.
Well, no, I'm fat. I need to sit sometimes. Okay, so I need some just to put an ass in them. So, like, as you guys start to evolve and grow this thing, what I want to know is like, what is your goal for the future going into 2025 and beyond? And then my bigger thing is if you guys could pick 3 bands that you guys would like to see roll through here, being realistic about the capacity, because like obviously I would like Billy Strings and Goose like that's not gonna happen. Although both of them have played, right? Well, no, Goose played, but Goose played Hoadies back in the day.
Yeah.
Way back in the day.
Way back in the day, yeah.
That's because fucking Rick was making tacos in the fort. But like, who are some of these bands that you would like to get to come here? And then what is each of your guys' goal or vision for the future?
I mean, I'll speak to the vision and the goal first. I mean, I think I've been here for 7 seasons now, and each year we've made physical improvements to the space, but also I think we've really grown our team, and I just want to keep building on that. I think I'm always blown away, but also not totally shocked when people are like, I have no idea what the Mishawaka is.
Bro, can I be honest? The sound quality compared to the last time that I went up, and then I came up here, I was like, holy fuck. And I, being ignorant, I was like, Dan, did the Whompers bring in like extra speakers to like turn this up? Because that was one of the things was like, I was like, oh, it's beautiful venue, it's picturesque. The music still sounded great, but like last night it like hit. So like, are you guys always adapting and evolving some of that setup? Like it's not the wall of sound, but but it is powerful. And so is there stuff that you guys are always doing with that as well?
You know, we work with the production company that we contract with for our PA. We don't own our own PA. So you guys like rent them? Yep. So we have the ability.
And is it by season or how does that work?
It's by season for the most part. And so we have the ability to take a look and see, you know, what's out there and like what might be available in their warehouse. How can we improve our house rig here, and what's that going to cost us on a per show, per season rental? So
does the Valley change anything for the way that it sounds or reverberates through the Pooter? Or?
I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily. This physical space does. The building, the river,
like how it's
the fence,
fit in.
How this is all hitting will certainly impact things. And so I think we have a great rig for the space, and we have great engineers and great system techs who've taken the time to really dial in the sound as best we can for this.
And all those crazy lasers and stuff you saw last night, it's not our stuff. A lot of these artists will bring it in, but we did recently upgrade all our lighting in the last couple of years as well.
Well, dude, there's nothing like seeing something blown on the back of that mountain as they're just shredding on this little stage. And that's what was cool is like you guys have transcended like from reggae to electric to jam to old country blue. Like you guys play all the music. So now, Dan, I'd like to know who are some of these bands that you would really love to see run through here so that we can get these fans to hear this and start pushing for your favorite bands to come through here. And then you guys come up the Pooter, stay at the Riverside, catch some of the shuttles, drink our delicious Mishawaka ale. But like, who is the music that you'd like to see?
Well, we got, like when I started here and started doing the booking, like there was a lot on my list, right? And a lot of these bands now we've kind of gotten up here was the Leftover Salmons, the Yonder Mountains. Those were some of my favorites, growing up. So I wanted to come up here.
Check.
We had Humphreys and Sound Tribe, Disco Biscuits. But now I'd say the top of that list, my favorite band, String Cheese Incident. That's a big goal for me to be able to get those guys up here. Would love to get them up here. Yeah, they had 95, I think, was the last time they played up here.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so we need to push the boys. They can't play Dylan anymore during the week. So, like, why not? Like, why not?
And then, Kyle, Billy, Keith, they've all come up here in separate
individually, but they haven't come back together as a band.
Yeah. So, we could do 3, 5, however many nights it took. We could make
Dan will make it happen. He will make it happen.
And then, the guy we saw last night at the old Tour de Fat, that's a goal of mine. I want to get Paul Coffin up here. I would love
Paul Coffin?
Yeah, he's
nice.
Great.
Some good old country.
Yeah, and another one on our list that we've been talking about is your old pal Frasco. We'd love to get Andy Frasco back up here.
I was here in the crowd last time Frasco played.
He's open.
Andy, I know you're fucking cool, but like you're not as cool as this place, bro. Like, let's make it happen. You live in Denver. On an off day, let's just shoot up to Bellevue and come play the Mish. Right? Let's make it. Andy will be on one of our future episodes. I will make sure to push that hard. A lot of our friends are part of Frasco and the UN. Like, let's I can't. Cheese seems like a fucking heavy promise for me, but like I can bullshit on the internet. I don't know how great that would be, but I will definitely pressure the shit out of Andy Frasco. What I wanted to do, gentlemen, is say thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the scene. Thank you for taking care of such a beautiful venue and continuing to offer it for us. There's a lot of people that are like, oh, let's go to Red Rocks. And I'm always saying, have you ever been to the Mish, right? Have you ever seen this outdoor amphitheater? And there's so many people that haven't. And what you need to do is you need to come check this out. Check out the calendar, see who's coming. Message Dan to tell who you guys want to see. But more importantly, we have to reach out to the bands, because if they know that you're going to buy tickets and we'll see them at that place, that will make them more likely to sign up. So I wanted to say thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Cody.
I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I'm sorry if I get too drunk tonight. I blame the free beers. So we'll see you next week.